Welcome to the No Name Brand Podcast. My name is Sashka Hanarappal, actress, singer, dancer, turned brand marketing, sales, and advertising strategist who brands your soul. And each week I bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover your undergod, turn up your leadership notches, challenge the status quo, because you're fast and furious with a powerful message to share with the world. Thank you for taking time out with me today, and without further ado, let's get our creative and wisdom juices flowing. Creativity. What springs to mind when I mention that word? An artist? A designer? Someone who can create something out of nothing? Someone who's super passionate and committed to their art? Someone who uses their hands or voice to create originals. Isn't it funny how when we mention the word creativity, you think about them and not you being able to be creative? Our next guest believes you've been creative since birth. In fact, you were born a creative genius, and yet somewhere along the way you stopped creating. And the big question is, why did you stop? Please welcome today's guest. Here she is, Jenny CAVENAUGH-BOND. Hello.
Hello.
How are you today?
I am fabulous, thank you very much. And you?
Absolutely wonderful, thank you. Where are you in the world today?
I'm in the UK.
Oh.
That's where I'm from.
Brilliant. Let our listeners know. So tell us, Jenny, why did we stop being creative when we were born creative geniuses?
Well, creativity needs to be nurtured. And having asked, funnily enough, a lot of people this question of why did you stop? A lot of the time it's because somebody belittled something that they did, told them it was messy, it wasn't good enough. And as kids, we take this on and we build walls and constructs to stop ourselves getting hurt. And we go, no, I'm not going to create because I got hurt when I created, when I was authentic. And they stop completely. And it's teasing that out and saying, look, that's okay. I know it hurt. I know it was difficult, but you can come back to it. I was very lucky. I was a nurtured creative. My mum is a huge creative. My grandparents were huge creatives. I was the kid putting paint across the walls. And how, like, there is actually a photo of me with standing next to these blue handprints over a freshly plastered wall. I was that kind of child. And it wasn't a case of being allowed to do it. I just did it because that's how I was taught to do it. But so many people get taught, don't make a mess. And one of my really good friends actually told her kids, no, you could only paint on this square of paper. And it must be within the paper. It's like, no, don't constrain them. Please don't constrain them. But it's a self-expression. So it's just breaking through that block that we've created of, no, I can't do that. Oh, no, I mustn't be messy. Oh, I can't draw well. And actually, that was one of my big ones. I actually convinced myself I couldn't draw. Couldn't draw faces. I could paint, I could make art, I could scrapbook, I could do any number of creative things, but I couldn't draw faces. And actually, over the years, I've been working that out over the last 2 years now, where I can draw faces. They're not lifelike, they're not realistic, but I can now get the proportions right. And my problem was I couldn't get the proportions. And I convinced myself I couldn't do it. And this was as a 16-year-old art student. And it's amazing the blocks we put in our own way.
So how do we find our way to creativity? I mean, for some reason, creativity is super intimidating and only they can do it. So how do we find our way there? What kind of nurturing is required there?
It's that brave jump.
Oh.
Okay, I'm going to do it. And it doesn't matter if it looks good, it looks bad. What I found was letting go of the end construct really, really good. And by the end construct, I just mean the end piece. So when we start creating, especially as adults, we think we have to put it all figured out. It's all got to be perfect. It's got to look like this. If it doesn't look like a Van Gogh or a Degas, it's not good enough. Well, hang on a minute. Creativity isn't the end product. Creativity is the process of creating. It's not this final piece that's all beautiful. It's great if it is beautiful, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes life isn't beautiful. Why would that be any different? So letting go of that end construct of it's got to look perfect, it's got to look realistic. And we tend to have these ideas of what art is, not just creativity, but what is art. And we think of these lovely big museum pieces that are fine oil paints and just so gorgeous. It's not just that. We turn around to our children and say, that lovely scribbled handprint that you've chucked a few colours at, we call that art. Why don't we do it for ourselves? So just taking that jump and letting go of the end product really helps you embrace something a little different, something that's pure, really. It's that process of creativity that is creativity, not that end product. And when you start to realize that, it changes everything. It really does. And you start to create things, and you can be taught step by step. You can take step by step classes, and you will get results. And then you start to experiment on your own, or you start to experiment on your own. You come up with stuff you don't like, but you learn what you do like. You learn what didn't work. And taking those steps and treating yourself really kindly is massive. It's this big liberating thing, really.
I had my own little epiphany over there, because two of my core values for my brand is creativity and wisdom. And for a very long time, I've always been very creative. But funnily enough, I wasn't nurtured into being able to do anything on the walls. That was a definite no.
Yeah, it was also a definite no for me. It got cleaned off very, very, very quickly before my dad found it.
But I was allowed to express myself. I come from an acting background and singing and dancing. Creativity is really therapeutic, right? There's so many ways in which creativity can assist us in getting over things like, I don't know, grief, depression, heartbreak. How have you helped others with therapeutically with creativity? What did you offer them?
Well, it started with myself, actually.
Oh.
So my background, I have suffered from depression from about 16, 17. Wow. And in the last 10 years, I've been bereaved 7 times. And it's not like estranged family or anything. We were quite a large, close-knit family. It's immediate family bereavements. I was very lucky in that I had grandparents up till I was mid-20s. But all of these bereavements tend to have more time to get over them. And I was getting a year and then getting bereaved again. And then again, it just starts to build up. And we have this concept, certainly in the UK, and I believe throughout the Western world, of, oh no, you just get on with it, you just get on with it. You come to a point where you just get on with it. And when you're not getting the time to heal, you have to do something with it. And I didn't. I crashed and burnt completely. I was an utter mess. I couldn't cope with life. I could barely go to work. And in the end, I knew something had to change. I've seen therapists, I've been on medication. I was just like, I can't keep doing this cycle. I can't keep getting to the point where I'm almost burnt out, going on meds, going and seeing a therapist, getting almost back to... And I started turning to art, mixed media, more than anything, because that allowed me the freedom of expression I needed at that time. And it was basically giving myself permission to sit down with a piece of paper and make a mess. That was it. And I poured my heart, my soul, everything went onto some of these bits of paper. And it was so liberating, so therapeutic. And I still work through some of these now, but it taught me what worked for me, what didn't work for me artistically, but it also taught me a lot about engaging with my emotions. And that was one of the big things one of my therapists said, was that I was emotionally repressed. Now, that was huge for me, because I've always thought myself as quite a connected person with my emotions. I was good. And suddenly I clocked that actually I'm shoving all of these down. I need coping mechanisms that work, not ones that work for a time and then stop, ones that work and I can keep using to connect. And over the last 2 years, I've developed what I consider a very healthy relationship with my emotions. It's changed dramatically. And I started talking about it, and I got responses of people going, oh my goodness, how did you do that? I know where you are. I know where you were. I'm there. What do I do? So little by little, I've started sharing more of my story, not just where I am, but the tools and techniques I've used. I've been a coach in the corporate world. So some of those coaching techniques I actually brought into my own healing, because they work for a reason. Yeah. They're there. So I'd be foolish not to use them, but I always put a bit of a creative twist on them. So I started to share these little ideas, don't just write it down and then paint over it. You change that story by physically painting over it. And that worked for me beautifully. So it was literally through trial and error that I started to share these experiences of mine. And then I get people coming back to me and go, I tried that. That was amazing. It's brilliant. And one of the girls I've worked with, she was very much, I'm creative, but I can't make a mess in the house. She's got 2 kids. And I said to her, look, why not? Well, I've got to tidy it up afterwards. Well, get them to help you. Oh, okay. And sometimes it's a little epiphany like that. And for her, she literally got the big dining table out, and that became a creative space for not just her, but the kids as well. And food was elsewhere, not on the dining table. They just used that as a creative station for about 3 weeks. And she came back and said, look, not only do I feel better about myself, I'm working through these emotions, because we never stop really working through our emotions. It's never a done process. She said, but the kids are doing it too. And it's beautiful to watch when they've had a bad day at school or they've had a bad grade. Instead of retreating into themselves, they're chucking it all on paper. They're happy and they're going and playing. And it's like, you teach your kids that too. And that's actually the most amazing story to me, because that's like, you've taken what I've done, you've taken it a step further, you've involved your children, which is brilliant. Because I mean, I suppose a lot of my emotional suppression comes from family learning. I watch how my parents coped with bereavement, or didn't, as the case may be, and they just got on with it. Great, so I need to just get on with it. What happens when you can't just get on with it? So yeah, it's been about sharing my stories and sharing the techniques that have worked for me, understanding where people are coming from with it. Like, okay, what do you actually need? So pulling the coaching side of things into it, and then just talking to it and saying, oh, okay, so you need a bit of freedom, you need a bit of creativity in your life. How about you just set some time aside and go for it? And when you allow yourself to do that, it opens up the door for more.
That is so... Oh, I just had like a gazillion epiphanies whilst you were talking. Oh, yes, and I can do this, and I'm going to put this. Oh, yes, of course. That's like the big thing with me. Because I'm creative, I encourage my kids to be creative as well. So they're always creating something, but it's always on our dining table. I'm like, get off my dining table. I need to eat here. I'm going to do 2 separate tables in the same. Bloody brilliant. I mean, it's just going to drive me nuts with that mess, but they have to clean it up.
Well, that's the thing. She got her kids to start clearing up after themselves, because that was the deal. You come home, you can create, you can make as much mess as you like, but you will be responsible for clearing it up. And yeah, she still has to clear up a bit of mess at the end of it, because the kids, they're 5 and 7.
Oh, mine are older. They're 8
well, they can sort themselves out, old enough, ugly enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, 5 and 7. Come on, you're going to have to clear up a little bit after them. They're never going to be perfect, but they put the paintbrushes in the pots, they take them to the sink, they put them on the side, they'll take the newspaper off the table themselves as well.
And it's done.
Yeah.
Is creativity nice to have or a necessity in our lives?
Essential, 100% essential. It is something that we think of as a nice to have, because we see it as self-gratification.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's time out of our day to do something that's not for a purpose. And it's true, it's not for a purpose per se, but you give yourself the time to sit and binge on Netflix. And I know so many of my old colleagues from the corporate world who come home, put the kids to bed, binge on Netflix with a bottle of wine, go to bed and do it all again the next day. And you're like, so you're telling me you don't have time. But when you get home and put the kids to bed, yes, I know you're tired, but it's 7:30 when they go to bed, 8 o'clock. You don't go to bed till like 10, 11. That's 3 hours where you can use to do something. And I actually create in front of the TV. I do binge watch Netflix. Like, seriously, I'm currently binge watching RuPaul's Drag Race. And
you get on perfectly with a lady in my group.
Love it.
Lovely.
However, I create in front of that. So I can have both. There's no reason you can't. And you could even have a glass of wine whilst you do it. Just don't put your paintbrush in it, which I am guilty of. But the one thing I did discover from that is you can paint with wine.
Well, I've seen worse painted with.
Exactly. Well, this was the stupid thing about it. I was watching it, I went, chuck my paintbrush in, and went, so frustrating. I've ruined a good glass of wine. Hang on, I wonder. Of course, red wine stains. Why can't I paint with it? And it sounds ridiculous, but it was so much fun to just paint in shades of wine.
Oh, wow. Do you still have the painting? You'll have to share it with us.
I have no idea. I've got bits kicking around. So I've got like 3 or 4 places where I stash my paintings. So I will see if I still have it.
Well, how many art pieces have you created?
Oh, God. In my lifetime, a lot. Like, it's ridiculous amounts. I don't have everything I've ever created. I do get rid of things. I'm very much of the opinion it's paint and paper. You know, yes, sometimes the paper is expensive, sometimes the paint is expensive, but at the end of the day, it's paint and paper. And I don't have infinite storage, so some things have to go. At the moment, I've probably got, if you include my scrapbooks, because I include them in my creativity, because I'm also a scrapbooker, I enjoy, it's a little less messy than getting the paint out.
Yeah.
It's still just as chaotic, but little less messy. Probably getting on for a couple of hundred pieces of art. And I don't create large art. I create sort of A3, A4 because I live in a small flat. I just don't have the space to do bigger. I'd love to, but it's not really practical. So my creativity does fit what's practical for me. Yeah, a lot.
Is procrastination the opposite of creativity, and why, in your opinion, do we do it? Why do we procrastinate?
Oh, any number of reasons. For me, I've been doing that a lot recently with my creativity, and it's a bit of a block around just not being able to get it right, which is why letting go of the end product is so liberating. And right now, well, I'm finishing off a course which involves, well, basically it's me dealing with my grief. It's how I dealt with my grief, and it's called heart healing. But I've got the creative side to do for that, and I know what I want to do, and I'm procrastinating about it, which sounds really stupid because I need to do it, but it's the fear of getting it wrong, of mucking up, of it not meeting my own expectations. And that's the thing, when it doesn't meet your, like, you set your own expectations for yourself and you get annoyed with yourself when you don't live up to them, or you think I'm rubbish, I'm not good enough, and all of that. So instead of hitting that emotion, we just don't do the activity. It's a method of escaping from it, almost preemptive, because no one likes to be hurt. Nobody likes to not meet that expectation, and children were taught to meet expectations, and there are consequences for not meeting those expectations. Okay, fair enough. But as an adult, you set those consequences, so it becomes this sort of self-reciprocating where we go, it's not going to be good enough, so I'll just not do it, and I won't meet those expectations. But you can change those expectations. So for me, I'm actually having to sit down and work with that for myself and work through that so that I can produce it and be proud of what I produce while still getting the essence of the lesson across. So we procrastinate for all sorts of reasons. It could be because we can't be bothered to clear up the mess afterwards.
That's also true.
I do it, but then I looked at what I actually get out. Where I'm creating, because I work quite small, I literally work on a sheet. I work on an area that is like 36 inches by 24 inches. It's not a large area at all. So what do I have out? Well, usually if I've got anything, there's a small paint palette, some water and some brushes. That's pretty much it. And I'm telling myself I can't be bothered to put a pot of water down the drain and put some pencils away. Really? When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous, but in your head it's, oh, well, I've got to clear up and da-da-da-da. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you actually break it down and go, well, what have I actually got to put away? Okay, it's not that much. When we talk about putting things away and clearing up, I think of like doing the housework, which I never want to do at the best of times. Putting away the small ton of washing that I've not bothered to put away for a few days. It's that kind of thing. Or if you've got kids, you're clearing up after mess, or what you perceive as mess. Well, then in your head, clearing up is a big activity. Well, it's not necessarily. So there's so many reasons why we procrastinate. It's figuring out, what are we actually procrastinating about? Like, what's the problem? Okay, so the root cause of me not doing is I won't meet my own expectations. Right, okay, how can I meet my own expectations? Well, change the expectations.
Simple.
And 90% of the time, it is the smallest, most simple change ever. It sounds too good to be true, but it's not. That's how it works.
Oh, I love that. What is your vision for creativity and for your business?
To share art with the world. But it sounds really, what's the word I want? It sounds quite trite to say it like that, but I know how much I have got out of creativity as a person. I know how much it's changed me. I know how much it's helped me. It's not just about making a masterpiece. And when we talk about art and creativity, we do think like the Louvre, the National Gallery. No, think smaller. Think smaller. And I want to empower people to step out of that comfort zone and put those first strips of paint on that bit of paper and just go for it. Let go of that end result. Let go of what you already have as preconceived ideas. Let's start working with those stories that you have, with those emotions that you have. Let's connect and work through them. And like I said before, for me, creativity has given me the most flexible emotional connection. I wouldn't have believed it. If somebody had told me that's what I was doing at the time, I would have been like, no, that's not what's happening. But actually it was. And I've always been a bit of a creative escapist. I've always had some sort of creative activity on the go. I've just never connected it with healing, with self-care, of anything like that. But that's what it is. And your self-care is essential. If you ask anyone, they will say self-care is essential. Whether they do it or not is another matter. But when you find that method of self-care that works for you, like I did, I want to share it with everybody. I want everyone to have the opportunity to just have that freedom, to have those connections, and also to teach their children that as well, because that's huge to me. I didn't realize until probably about 2 years ago, well, probably less actually, that I was a nurtured creative. I didn't even know that. I thought that's what happened for everyone until I saw my mate saying, no, you can only paint on this square of paper. I was like, okay. And after talking to people, a lot of people are told like not to make a mess, all of this stuff. And I realized that actually creativity needs to be nurtured. And when you're an adult, it's only you who can nurture it. You can't give that task to your mother again, because your mother's not going to tell you what to do. You're an adult. And when you're an adult, you get to set those rules. You get to change those rules as suits you. So just realizing that things aren't as fixed as you think they are. So my big vision is to share art, to share healing, and to liberate people from these little boxes of, oh no, I can't create. Yeah.
It's amazing. We're at the end, unfortunately.
That flew by.
Yeah. I would like to know from you, what are you not good at?
There's plenty. I am not good at keeping a tidy house, for a start. I'm not.
That club.
I'm really not. I cannot clean an oven to save my life, mainly because I'm quite short. I have to crawl in them to get to them. So I'm like, nope, not happening. I'm not particularly good at maths at all. I'm not too good with statistics. I'm not great at technology at all. Everything I know within my business, I've learned. And it's been a bit of an uphill struggle, because me and stats, I look at stats and go, yeah, it's a number. And for all I come from a corporate world that is based on stats as a measure of how everyone's doing, I was the one turning around going, yeah, I don't care what the stats says. I have faith in them. Mine was always gut instinct. So I'm not good at that bit. That sort of taking the tangible and going, right, this is where all the focus needs to be. My brain just sort of stops and goes, no. Nope.
Not happening, Jenny.
Nope.
Not on my time.
I actually have to go to my husband and say, right, talk me through it. What does it even mean? And bless him, he's an engineer. He's got the mathematical brain. It's brilliant. But I sit there and I'm like, I know it. I just can't make the connections. If it's explained to me, I get it. But no.
It doesn't have to be either, which fine.
Yeah, I've learnt a lot in that how women are always, well, women especially are always told, you can be anything you want to be. And it's true, especially in this day and age. We can aspire to be anything we want to be, but it doesn't mean you have to be everything. And it's something I've learned over the years, that I can't be everything. So, okay, I have plenty of weaknesses. There's plenty I can do. There's plenty I can't do. And we find ways to work around this. So with housework, I share it with my husband or do the bare minimum.
You share. That's good. Like you do with the kids. Help me clean up with the mess.
Yep,
Cool.
exactly.
So it's been quite mind-opening having you here today. And as we're nearing the end now, I ask all my guests 2 questions and would love your input and our intake on it. You kind of touched on it just before. How do you want to change the world or challenge the world doing what you do?
I want to change that social norm that self-care is selfish.
Ooh.
That's my big thing, that self-care isn't selfish. Creativity is a form of self-care. It's not selfish to take that time for yourself. Your children are going to learn from you. And I've seen it within my family. My mother didn't take a lot of time for herself. She was always doing. And my sister's learned from that. And she's actually got quite a lot of very conflicting health conditions, to the point where she can't take time for herself. She mentally cannot untangle and take space. And that's what she's learned, unfortunately. I want to change that. I want everyone to understand that self-care, it's essential, and just give yourself the time to have that space to connect with yourself. It's like we're surrounded by all this media and this advertising. I love the analogy. I don't know whether it was a drunken night out we came up with it, but one of my mates and I've never had an orgasm from washing my hair. Never. And everybody globally knows this advert for a certain shampoo that the woman's washing their hair and, oh my God, it's amazing. It's like the act of washing your hair is essential. It's not self-care. It's not a luxury. And it's myth busting, basically.
That's so true. You can sit and think and philosophize about that a little bit.
We had a very, very in-depth conversation about it. Good night.
I can imagine. I'd like you to fill in the blanks on 3 of my core values. Creativity for you is?
Essential.
Wisdom for you is?
What you make it.
Good, yeah. Passion for you is?
100% enjoyment.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us here, Jenny.
Thank you for having me.
So lovely speaking to you and meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Such wonderful people in the world, and then you meet them, you're like, oh my God, this is so exciting.
It's amazing, because I saw the advert and I was like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. And here I am.
Yeah, you are. Find out, the listeners can find out more about you in the show notes. So they can find out your social media handles, website, favorite book, favorite quote, and a little bit about you as well.
Yes, and come visit me by all means. I'd love to meet you.
Yes, and do some creative stuff, some juju.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Dang, that was just supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I enjoyed having you on board, and please do me and you a favor. Head on over to iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. Click subscribe, and a super bonus, leave your review and you stand a chance of being announced and advertised on the show. I'm always striving to ensure that your brand is uplifted and empowered. Remember, done is better than perfect. So be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and send in your feedback too. You're the absolute best. Keep rocking.